So I'm Elisa Bellotti, I'm a senior lecturer at University of Manchester and I'm a member of the Mitchell Centre for Social Network Analysis. In Manchester, and especially at the Mitchell Centre, we study social networks, which are a very nice way of representing the hustle and bustle of everyday relationships into structures that can be formalized in nodes and ties. I've been studying social network analysis for many years and I got passionate about it because when I was doing my PhD, I started reading sociology and I realized that all the classical sociologists always talk about how sociology is the science of individuals being together. But then all the techniques that we used to, that were available for sociology, were all techniques that were based on individuals and they were aggregating values for individuals in order to make assumptions for the whole society. So I was looking for something that would give me a mean to understand how people get together and how structures create around individuals. So when I started my PhD, I was interested in studying friendship, and I realized straight away that it's more or less impossible to study friendship if you don't put it in the context of a network, because friendship never happens just between two people. So gossip, support, conflict, fun normally happens in circles of friends. So I was looking for a method that would allow me to mix together the formal and structural aspects of a network with the constructive, the narratives of those networks and what people might say when they are together, what people might share when they are together, how they construct their idea of friendship and how they negotiate the rules of their friendships while interacting with each other. And social network analysis allows me to do this because it's easily mixable together with qualitative interviews, for example. So for my PhD, I collected networks of people, of friends, and then I interview these people to see how they define their relationships and how they negotiate the rules of friendships within their relationships. And that was my first project, which gave me very interesting results in terms of how we define friendship, what friendship is for, what people use their friends for, but also like how they resolve conflicts or how they might change their friendship networks through their lifetime. So social network analysis is a theoretical and methodological perspective that use graph theory and mathematical calculus to look at the properties of networks. Networks are constructions or graphs that you create out of nodes, so you design nodes and then you can join these nodes with relationships. Nodes can be anything, can be people, can be animals, sometimes there are organizations or groups, they can even be countries, and the relationships can represent advice, exchange, conflict, trade, or anything that makes sense being represented as a tie between two actors. And in social network analysis, we use these graphs that create with the overlaps of different ties together to look at properties of the networks, like the density of the networks or the centrality of certain actors, or if the network separates into different groups. So one of my main themes of research is sociology of science, and I got interested in looking at the networks of collaborations of academics when they get funded to do research. And that is very interesting because it allows you, the network analysis allows you to look at the complexities of these networks, and it also shows you how people might do collaborate with other people without realizing the structure that those collaborations build when they are looked overall together in a macro perspective. So by looking at collaborations to research grant, I was able to find out, for example, that some people might gain more money because they change research groups over time, but also I found out that interdisciplinary networks, for example, and interdisciplinary projects make more money overall over time, even when the budgets are cut. one thing that I'm very interested at the moment, that I started to look at more in details, is the theme of gender and in academia, where obviously there is a lot of evidence that women seems to be relegated to the margins when they work in academia, and I want to understand if that is happening already at the level of collaboration in networks, of research collaboration, when people bid for money and get grants. And one result that is very clear is that although women and men do not seem to construct very different networks from each other, men tend to prepare to work with other men, and women seems to gain more advantage when they work with men, possibly because men are already in important and powerful position in academia, which also means that if men don't want to work with women because they prefer to work with men, and women needs men to be successful, then they automatically get excluded from the powerful structure of network collaborations. And then I ended up using network analysis in so many different contexts that it's amazing how the same methodology and the same perspective can explain so many different social phenomena. So on one hand, for example, I use social network analysis to bundle together sustainable behaviors and see if those sustainable behaviors can be grouped into meaningful practices that differentiate people who dedicate themselves to sustainable consumption to people who don't care about sustainable consumption. On another hand, for example, I use social network analysis to map the network of distribution of counterfeit alcohol across European countries, where I work together with police and other institutions to tackle criminals who were in charge of distributing those networks. And in these networks, for example, the most important things were not just the nodes, but also the resources that might travel across the network and the relationship between these actors. Recent projects that I've been involved in are projects on abused women and how the network changes around them to support them getting out of abused relationship, or networks of human traffickers who are now in jail, and talks about how they got involved into crimes and how their network supported or prevented them into further crime. In my career, I mainly used social network analysis mixed with qualitative methods, only in very descriptive ways. So I use very simple measures of social network analysis like centrality or brokerage to show how these properties might affect the behavior and the outcome of the actors involved in a network. However, social network analysis is now very powerful in its statistical modeling. So there are many research groups around the world that use statistical modeling to look at how networks create or evolve and how networks might impact the outcome of certain behaviors. What I'm very passionate about at the moment is to look at gender differences in social network structure. Interestingly enough, social network analysis always looked at gender as a variable or as an attribute to characterize gender structures and network structure and gender outcome. But so far there is no real study that looks at how gender might affect the way in which we construct our network. So for example, do women and men resolve conflicts in their relationship in a different way, or do they make friends with our friends in a different way, and how the same structures or different structure might change the behaviors of people in men and women. And that is what I'm trying to observe, and hopefully I will get some interesting results by looking at these topics. So if you want to know more about network analysis, you can follow me on my website page at the University of Manchester. I'm part of the Department of Sociology and, as I said, of the Mitchell Center of Social Network Analysis. And if you want to learn a bit more about social network analysis and mixed methods, you can read my book on mixed methods. But also, if you are interested, for example, in ego networks or personal networks, I wrote another book with my colleagues of the Mitchell Center on how to do ego net analysis. And my research is published in many articles, in many journals. So you find my research on scientific networks published in the journal Social Networks, as well as in the books of multi-level analysis written by Emanuel Laziga and Tom Snyder. I also have a Twitter account. You can follow me at Elisa Bell76. and I hope I'll see you all soon in Manchester for social network analysis.